When I was in 5th grade, at a dinner table with my family, I announced that I want to be a politician. And not just any politician, I told my parents I want to be the politician that solves poverty for the country. Like you can imagine, in a normal middle-class family, there was pin-drop silence after I said it, because they just hoped this will pass. Because in 3rd grade, I had said I want to be an IFS officer to Japan. So they were just hoping I'll want to be an engineer or a doctor like a good Indian kid. But it did not pass. All 4 of my grandparents had migrated from Pakistan to India in 1948 during the partition. They left everything they had behind to start over from India in tiny houses, small lanes, with absolutely nothing. A lot of people I know inherit land, money, but the only inheritance I have is gratitude to India and what they call patriotism. Now, unfortunately for my family, their patriotism looks very different than mine. For them, patriotism is being thankful to the country and almost always agreeing with the government. The reason it's unfortunate for them is because my patriotism means seeing the truth of where my country is. My country right now has 43% members of parliament who have criminal records against them, and 29% who have serious criminal records like rape and murder. In my country, the truth is that access to education, health, justice is dependent on your caste, gender, and now even religion. It can take as much as 20 years to get a court hearing. We only have 13% women in parliament, and the maximum we've ever touched is 14%, and we backslided again. And when I see this country and the truth about my country, my patriotism and love asks me to do something else. I started my career as a development professional. I taught kids, I worked with policymakers, I worked with governments in education system reform, but it always came back to politics. And for anyone who knows me, knows that I'm a very romantic person. Even after 14 years of being with the same man, if he walks into the room right now, I do have butterflies. And I have the same butterflies when it comes to my country. I love it so much. I see the imperfection in it, but I know the potential that it has. And it's the same romanticism that led me to start Indian School of Democracy. I had just returned from Harvard, and everyone expected me to have a glamorous job. But instead, what I did was traveled across the country for 2 years, meeting young people who wanted to be in politics, meeting Muslim leaders, meeting very old politicians, meeting bureaucrats, meeting women, meeting people from northeastern part of the country to ask, what can we do about our democracy? Because this country is ours and we have to do something about it. And when Indian School of Democracy was born, we were very clear. I'm sure all of you know a great Indian engineer, a great Indian doctor, and a great Indian manager. Because India has institutes that prepare people for engineering, medicine, and management. But we don't have any organizations that nurture principled politicians. The mission of Indian School of Democracy is that we want to nurture grassroots political leaders who have the moral courage and imagination to make democracy work for every citizen of the country. And in the last 7 years of building ISD, I've had the utmost privilege of working with 400 alumni, 3,000 youth who come from the corners of the country, who come from the communities they wish to serve. For them, it's not a theoretical problem they're trying to solve. They've lived it and they've grown into these problems. I've had a chance to work with Ashwita, who comes from a family of beedi rollers, and she's preparing now for election to run for a state legislator. But she's not doing it alone. She's doing it with 100 other women who will contest at a local level with her to show solidarity. I've had the chance to work with Gigraj, who can mobilize 10,000 people in an hour who belong to Dalit community because he's from there and he's devoted his whole life going to jail, mobilizing people for the betterment of these people. I've had a chance to work with Archana, who comes again from a very marginalized community but is now using technology and data to reduce barriers to entry for women like her who want to contest election. And that gives me a lot of hope. But after 7 years of doing it, I've chosen to step away from building ISD because I'm bothered by a question. And it's not because I don't love politics anymore. In fact, I love it so much, and like any deep love, it keeps asking more of you. Now the question that I'm sitting with is, how do we really build an ecosystem where these leaders who have the moral courage and imagination have it in them to thrive, to sustain and to ask questions that challenge institutions and keep institutions alive for democracy. India is the world's largest democracy, but it's also a deeply wounded one. Our affirmative action allows for a Dalit woman to become an elected village head, but she is silenced by systems that are much older than the constitution. And I know that that's not just an Indian story. In this room, we have people from Venezuela, Tibet, Congo, Kenya, and US. And democracy means different things to each one of us at this time. But I do think the undercurrent that we're aware of is that politics has been captured. It's become the politics of power, of almost dehumanizing the citizens of the country, and I would like to reclaim that. I would like for us to truly meet this global moment where we are not fighting just the autocracy and the corruption, which is very much needed, but we are actually trying to see and reimagine what politics means. I know that some of us are fighting just for the right to exist, for the right to be free, and for the right to speak up. And then there are some of us in this room who are trying to just fix the broken systems so that they work for each and every citizen of the country and not just for the few with privilege. A lot of times, at least in my country, politics has become about building an empire. What I would like for politics to be is that, like gardening. Can we really have the patience to plant seeds, till the soil, plant the seeds, water them, let them grow, and sometimes we may not even have the pleasure of seeing them blossom. But can we still do it with what is called in Urdu the shiddat, which is utmost sincerity and intensity? I want to be that gardener. A professor of mine used to say that every generation needs to fight for its own freedom. And a corollary, which is very evident now, as unfortunately as we live in this moment, but what is clear to me is that if we need to fight for our own freedom, we also need to have our own leaders. Yes, I come from the land of Gandhis and the Nehrus who've given us a lot, but I think it's our generation's responsibility to really reclaim politics as the highest form of public service, and I'm really hoping that all of you join me in that gardening and in that tilling that soil so that we can reclaim politics, we can reclaim power and reclaim democracy. Thank you.